My name is Dan Allen. I'm a senior software engineer at Jfokus, and I work on the SEAM project. I'm the SEAM community liaison, and I'm here to present on some of our projects that we work on, specifically CDI, the specification, and SEAM, the extensions for CDI, and also Archillion, which is a testing framework for all of Java EE and really beyond that. So we've been able to capture the attention of a large range of developers with Archillion specifically. So SEAM 2 is very much the precursor for the programming model that went into Java EE 6, which is called CDI, or Context and Dependency Injection for Java EE, which is a bit of a mouthful. But it's essentially a dependency injection framework for Java EE. But not only that, it allows you to build extensions on top of it that were really unprecedented in Java EE. You could always do some extension points like servlet filters, but this actually allows you to customize the components, the beans. And it really is one of the most sophisticated bean containers that's ever existed. So it's not just that we have some copy of another dependency injection framework in Java EE, but there was true innovation in this space, in the specification. And so what SEAM 3 now is really trying to demonstrate is not necessarily we're the best integration framework out there, you should use us. Of course, we want it to be useful, but it very much becomes a platform of examples for how you can extend Java EE. So we're kind of seeing it that developers may look at what's in SEAM and they may decide that's really useful for me, I'd like to use that in my application, or they may look at what's in SEAM and say, I kind of like what you're doing, but I could probably do it better myself, or I could do it simpler, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that as inspiration. So that's the neat part, is when someone takes it and runs with it. Because at the end of the day, what we really want is to make Java EE successful. And if you're writing extensions and helping it be successful, that's just as good as you're using SEAM and having it be successful. The key is, can CDI suit your needs, however it is that you're going to get it. So it's a very much different focus than SEAM 2 in that regard, because it's building on Java EE as opposed to kind of forking or somehow tacking it onto the side of Java EE. To give you a basic understanding of what CDI is offering and then what SEAM is adding to that offering is, so at the core, CDI is a dependency injection framework. So it allows you to decouple your application, have your code spread out in different components, and then you can wire those components together so they can call each other. And it's the first time that we've really seen a dependency injection framework where you don't have to go configure those wirings in some other file, that you can actually use the Java typing system to define where the dependency injection points are. So what we like to say is that you get loose coupling, which is something that's good architecturally when you're developing an application. But you don't sacrifice strong typing in getting that. So you can get good tooling, you can use control-click in an IDE, and it will jump to the implementation of what's satisfying that injection point. So it's dependency injection done really well. And so what SEAM 3 is offering on top of that is giving you things that you can inject that are built in. For instance, you may want to inject an entity manager. I like to think that it's very much a window into a lot of different technologies, and at the end of the day, you just ask what it is that I can inject into my bean. And SEAM is a large catalog of things that you can inject, whether it be persistence, whether it be rules engines, workflow engines, whatever the context or entry point is into that system, you just inject it in your bean and then you have access to a new technology. So that's really why dependency injection means so much to an application developer, because it gives you access to so many different technologies that are out there. And CDI is also the same stateful programming model that made SEAM 2 so popular. So that's sort of in contrast to the singleton model. So there's that aspect of it as well. So I did 3 presentations this week. The first one was on CDI. It was a long day, 3.5 hour tutorial. And then I followed up with one today that was just an hour long that focused, kind of built on where I left off on that tutorial to cover extensions. So the first talk was very much about how you use CDI, and the second talk was how to extend CDI. And then in between, I did a presentation on Archillion with my colleague Ajlak Knutson. And Archillion is, if you were writing CDI, it's what you would use to test it. But you could also test really any Java enterprise software. And what's nice about Archillion is that you can write integration tests, and they look like unit tests, but they run inside the container. And inside the container could be an embedded container, it could be on a different machine, on a cloud. You could even interact with multiple containers. So there's a lot of flexibility, but the complexity of writing the test really stays very minimal.
And what's coming up next for you?
Sure, I'm doing quite a number of talks. Next up is JAX London. But before that, actually at the end of this week, I'm meeting up and going snowboarding in Oslo, well actually at Trysil for the first time I've ever snowboarded outside the United States. I'm going snowboarding with my colleague Ajlak. So I'm enjoying being in Scandinavia and kind of exploring around because it's the first time I've ever been up here. But then after that it's off to JAX London and to 33 Degree and a couple other conferences probably every month. Talking about CDI, talking about Archillion, and talking about Seam 3.
And what has been your favorite topic at Jfokus?
A bit torn. One of my favorite topics right now is just Git. So I went to Matthew McCullough's talk on Git, and really any talk that he gives you want to go to because you're going to learn something. And Git fundamentally changed the way that we develop software at JBoss. And I could probably watch Git presentations and learn something every time just to remind myself. But that, and I caught a talk on Vaadin, which I've been looking at some other UI frameworks to use, and it's very encouraging what they're doing. And it reminds me a bit of something that we're doing in our community with Irai, which is a project that potentially could integrate well with them. So I'm excited about what might come out of that. So I was glad I caught that talk.
And do you have any other subjects of your own that you'd like to take up? Anything else?
Oh, just kind of a open.
Yeah,
Answer some
basically
questions.
if there's something else you'd like to mention.
Sure. So this is, like I said, this is the first time I've been in Sweden, and this is the first time at Jfokus, and I really enjoyed this conference because it's very laid back and really great sessions. And I like the venue. The rooms are very intimate. They have good sound, and I felt like I really was able to connect with the audience. And I always had a full room, so maybe that was the talk, and maybe that was just the people in this conference are really excited to learn. So I was glad that I came up. It was a great opportunity to speak here.
I actually have one more question, but you sort of answered that right now, and that is, I was going to ask you what you think of Jfokus.
Sure.
I think the last one's words, but we can take another one.
Sure. Well, you know, when I'm looking at conferences that I speak at, it's difficult to really choose one conference over another because, you know, there are quite a number of conferences to choose from. But Matthias has been very, very persistent in pursuing me to come to Jfokus, and I'm glad that he did because it's clearly a very vibrant community here. And I hear that every user group is well attended whenever it is. So when I go to conferences and I travel so far, I want to make sure that, you know, I'm speaking to audiences that are generally interested, and I can definitely say that Jfokus has attentive audience and very creative minds. So it's a great place to have a venue, and I'd encourage my colleagues to come and speak here if they were invited. So it's certainly a good conference.